Good morning, everybody. Marcy's got a good question here. So, she would like me to demonstrate using the slope solver with the linear regression 80 period. So, the first thing she'd like to see is she'd like a signal generated in the direction of the bar with the slope turning up for a long, and a signal when the slope turns down for a short. Alright, so let me get my chart set up here. Interesting to see the S&P consolidating here right here. Makes you wonder what's going to happen. It's gonna break some way. So alright, so I'm going to clean my chart up here a little bit. Get some of the stuff off of here. Get BloodHound off there. Alright, nice clean chart. So we'll put the linear regression 80 on here. Alright, we'll make that nice and thick, and then next I'll put a clean version of BloodHound on here. There we go. Let's see, alright, 5 days of data. That should be good. And let's see, I'm on the CL. Let's see if a range chart will kind of smooth things out a little bit. Yeah, that looks a little smoother. Alright. So Marcy, alright, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what Marcy wants to know is essentially she'd like to get a short signal here when the linear regression starts sloping down, and would like a long signal there when the linear regression starts sloping up. So, right, basically we want to identify, these inflection points. Alright, so we'll start off with the slope solver, as Marcy had asked. Alright, first thing I'll do is I'll give my BloodHound file a name. Alright, just put today's date in there. There we go. And we'll start working on the logic tab right away. Alright, so I'm going to go to the solvers pull down menu and grab a new slope solver here. And we'll connect it up, and let me just check something out. Okay, Marcy wants to use an 80 period. So let me change that to an 80 period. And let's see, let me go and find some new, I think the new points here. I'm kind of guessing it's going to be that right there. And possibly this one right here. Definitely right there, that spot. So I'll just move that over there. All right, so I think generally speaking, Marcy's kind of looking for these reversal points in the slope of the linear regression indicator, such as that right there. All right, so let's open up BloodHound again. All right, switch back to my logic board, and we'll start working with the slope solver. So the slope solver is pretty simple. It's just going to tell you when your indicator is either pointing up or sloping down. Pretty simple analysis, but very common, I'd say. All right, so I'm going to put the linear regression indicator in there. We'll change the period to 80, and there's only one plot out of this indicator, so we'll just leave those checked as they are. And all right, so now if we look at the chart, we can see when the linear regression is either pointing up or pointing down, as determined by BloodHound's output. So let me give this a name here. There we go. Okay, just like so. However, Marcy just wants a signal essentially on the first bar, of when the linear regression changes direction. So, such as like where these arrows are. And of course we have other points here as well. So right there, that's the first bar when it changes direction, right? So is that one. So we're getting quite a bit of whipsaw action. So let me just kind of mark these out here. All right, so the easiest way, if you want just the first bar of when your indicator changes its slope direction, so such as marked by the arrows, the easiest way to do that and the best way to do that is to use the inflection solver. So that's what an inflection is. An inflection is the point at which a line changes angle, changes direction. So what we're going to do is, I have the inflection solver plugged in now, and let me change the name on this, like so, and change the indicator over. So now, if we look at BloodHound's output, you can see now it matches all the arrows that I put in the chart here exactly. So that is kind of the key solver that Marcy wants to use to get her initial trade signal. Right, so that is essentially part A. And now let's move on to part B here. So she's saying, I would like a signal when the linear regression 80 starts to turn neutral, or the linear regression 80 goes flat before it turns up or down. So I'm going to have to make an assumption here, Marcy. I'm assuming that you're wanting like an exit signal when the linear regression starts to flatten out. I think she's looking for basically a way to get out of the trade. So let's see, for example, let's connect the slope solver back up here. So for example, she's probably wanting to exit right here when the linear regression is starting to flatten out, something like that. All right, so to do that, I'm going to grab another slope solver, and we'll use this slope solver to determine, right, when the linear regression is starting to flatten out. So let's give this a name, and we'll call it flat. Alright, so I'm just setting up my linear regression 80 into the solver. Now, here's the key part, is using the minimum and the maximum slope here. So initially, we're just going to have to kind of take some guesses here. So I'm going to start off with like 0.5 ticks as my maximum slope. And so there we go. That kind of gives me some results. You can see how the output changed. So now the solver is only giving me a signal output when the slope matches 0.5 ticks. And that's probably a little too steep. So how about if I knock that down by half? So there we go. So now we can see we have right, this area in here, right, all the black unshaded areas now. It's kind of telling us when our linear regression is flat. So you can so you can experiment. We just have to experiment with this value and find out what looks best for you. What do you like, and also what works best for your indicator. And also this value will also change depending on your instrument, right? So right now I'm on oil. So different instruments have different tick values or tick sizes, and since slope is measured in ticks, therefore different instruments will have a different, well, yeah, I should say you'll probably want to use a different tick value, a different tick slope value for different instruments. So such as something like the YM, right? It doesn't move. It moves in 1 tick increments. It doesn't have decimal tick increments. So if you're putting this slope solver on the YM, you would probably, I think a simple conversion would be just to multiply this value by 10, and that probably would give you the equivalent for the YM instrument. So those are just some examples. The ES moves in quarter tick increments. So once again, this value here would be quite a bit different. So let's put this back to 0.2. Actually, I'll put it back to 0.25 and see what we get there. Yeah, all right. To me, we'll just use that for this demonstration here. That looks pretty good. All right, so Marcy wants to exit when the slope flattens out. So, such as these rectangle areas. So what we can do, let's see, let's do a little experiment here. What an easy thing to do is you could change the invert value on that, and that's not working because, well, actually, let me back up here. So the premise is that we want to build an exit signal, right? So we're going to be, entering like up here. We'll be going short up here when our linear regression, right, reverses down. And then when the linear regression flattens out, we want to exit, right? So since we're in a short position going down, we're going to want a long signal to exit our position, right? So we want a long signal essentially on right there. Or, we could get a long signal anywhere in this flat area is okay. All right, and this is just a long signal to exit the position. It won't put you in a long trade. So it's not going to buy. It's just going to close out your position. So if we use the invert, we can see that doesn't quite fit our needs because, look, this whole time here, when we want to be short, this is generating a long signal, so we'd be exiting. So that would close out our position almost immediately. So this doesn't work. And that's not working for us. What we could do, here's another option. So I'm just kind of playing around here just to get you guys comfortable with kind of just experimenting. So if you're not sure what to do, it's very easy just to kind of test out these various ways of manipulating the solvers here to get what you want. So let's try that. Now that's not quite working either. So if I set those to 0, so once again we're getting a long signal, but it's in the wrong area, right? We only want a long signal where these arrows are to exit our trade. So using the against direction output isn't quite what we want, but you can see essentially what it did is it reversed the solver's output. So instead of getting a short signal when the indicator is sloping down, we reversed it to a long signal. So that's how you can reverse this indicator, right? Which is different than inverting it, right? So right now you can see that this solver is providing no output. Now if I invert that, right, we're getting long and a short. So that's the difference between an invert or reversing the signal. Let's turn the invert off. So, all right, let's try the output in direction, and we'll use the less than 0 ticks here. But also, we will need to change our minimum slope. So our minimum slope parameter here affects these bottom two outputs. You see how it says in parentheses, it says min and min, and the upper two, in the upper two description it says max and it says max, right? So this maximum slope value is what affects these two output settings. So if we want to use, right, these bottom two down here, which are using the minimum or the minimum slope, we'll need to put the same slope value in there. And voila, look at that. You notice how now we're getting an output when it was flat. So remember, where I put these rectangles is where it was flat. However, remember, we want a long signal here, not a short signal here. So let's try using the against direction. So if we put a 1 in there, and there you go. See, we have a long output now down here in BloodHound's area. So let's set this output in direction, set it to 0, and see what we get. And there we go. Essentially, that's what we want. Alright, so let me, I'm going to change the name here and call this a flat exit. And let me build another slope solver real quick so we can compare the two. Alright, so I'll just get the indicator set up real quick, and next we'll set our slope up like so. Alright, and let me paste this other rectangle in like so. There we go. So we can see the rectangles are right marking the flat areas. Right, so this solver is essentially just telling us when there's a substantial slope to the indicator, right? And there's no output when the indicator kind of flattens out. And so this indicator, remember, it's kind of set up the same way. Our slope is set up to 0.25 ticks. However, the outputs have been manipulated so that we get an output when the indicator is flat. And look, you'll notice that there's a, look over here, there's a slight difference. So see how this bar is marked as flat? And let's see, the bar, yeah, this bar in between here. And hopefully you noticed that the difference is, you see how this has a 1 in it, but if we look at this slope, I don't have a 1 up here. So let's see, let's put a 1 up there, and I think, let's see, no, that's not doing it. Let's see, I changed that, and that's not doing it. Oh. There we go. That got them to match up there. Just a sec while I get this set up here. So just kind of playing around with the settings here, trying to get these two to match up exactly using the actual solver. And alright, since I'm not getting an exact match, then in this situation the best solution is going to be just to use a function node. So let's take a look at this solver here. So this is the solver, right, that's essentially telling us when the indicator is sloping. And of course, when this indicator is flattening out, then we're not getting a signal. Then there's no signal. And let's see, what we could do is that we could use a, let's see, let me set this up to get a digital output here. And yeah, there we go. I think that is probably a better output there. So before I had this at 0.25 ticks set to 0, and alright, hold on, let me refresh my chart here. Yeah, okay. Alright, now they're opposites. Okay, great. Now that I got this slope solver that's looking right, that's finding our flat spots. Now that I got it set up right, so let me change my rectangle here. There we go. So that is all identified as flat. And now that is matching the other solver that was set up to provide our exit signals. Yep, there we go. Okay, now they're matching each other. Great. Great, great. But I was going to show you another way to do this. Probably the best way is to, set up a solver such as this, right, using the output against direction, and then just use the use this output that says less than 0.25 ticks for the slope. All right, so whenever the slope is less than 0.25 ticks, or essentially kind of flat, that's when we want an output there. But there's another way we can do this. So if we take this solver and we know that we want to exit when there's no signal happening, then we can use a combination of function nodes as well to accomplish the same thing. So this is just another way of doing what this solver is doing. So it's two ways to accomplish the same goal. All right, so I'm going to use an inverter node first. Take an inverter. So let's take a look at this inverter here. So you'll notice whenever, right on the bars that were marked as our flat areas, if you look at BloodHound's output, you'll notice there's a long and a short. But also you'll notice that in here where the slope was is down, and we used to have a short output, right? Now we're getting a long output because we're doing an inversion. So we're inverting that signal. So, however, we don't want these short signals when the slope is down, right? Because we don't want to exit the trade too soon. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of these short signals here. And we need to get rid of these short signals here. And also we'll need to get rid of all of these long signals here. So we only want to keep the output here when we get in a long and a short at the same time, right? Because those are identifying our flat areas. So what we can use is we have this long-short modifier, and this does a bunch of different mathematical formulas. So if I plug that in there, and the mathematical formula I can use is product, right? So remember, product is the multiplication term. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the long output and multiply it by the short output. So if you have, so in this instance here, if we take the long output, which is 0, and multiply it by the short output, which is -1, 0 times anything is 0. And the same over here. If we take the long output, which is 1, and multiply it by 0, which for the short output, then the answer is 0. So setting the long-short modifier to product will give us what we want. So there we go. Now we have a nice, clean, long and a short signal when the slope is flat. So this type of an output will exit any trade. So it doesn't matter if we're long or short, with a long and a short output at the same time, that could be used to exit any trade that you have on. Right, that'll close out any trade. So we have two different options here. Let's see. So let me name this template here. Alright, so we have one template would be for our entries. So this one could actually be used for the entries. This signal here. Alright, so there's our short entry. And this could be our long entry. And then this solver could be our exits, or these nodes here could be our exit. So the next step would be, if we want to use these nodes here as our exit signals, then what we'll need to do is make a copy of this. And let's name this appropriately. So that's our exits. And so let's remove the solvers that we don't need. Alright, so now we have two different logic templates. right? One for the entries and one for the exits. And let's go through and let's clean this up. So I'll remove all of these. And yeah, maybe these function nodes got stuck in a loop or something when I disconnected the or deleted that solver. The next upgrade, the next release of BloodHound, the next update for BloodHound is going to be a pretty major back-end change, and so it should it's going to take care of little oddities like such as this right here. So what we've kind of done in technical terms, what Jeremy has done is he separated the interface from the logic engine, which kind of helps things out. There we go. All right. And yeah, we'll just wait on this guy instead of crashing it, because I didn't save this. So this hasn't been saved yet. There's two ways I could have saved this, right? I could go up to File and click on Save, or just closing out of the interface will save it back to the file as well. But if I'm just patient and let this do its thing, it'll come back, and then I can save it. And I'll get this fixed sometime. So Marcy, if you'd like a copy of this BloodHound template, just as always, send an email in to support and ask for today's workshop template. And I'll email those back to you. Right? Alright, so for now, I'm going to switch over to a different VMware. Alright, so I have a couple of indicators here on my chart. So I think I'm going to remove a couple just to keep things simple. And let's just work, we'll just work with this Price Action Swing Pro. And I also have the MACD on here so we can visually see the MACD that's being analyzed in the Price Action Swing Pro. So we see in this indicator, right, there's this divergence section, and so I had to go through and kind of change some settings. So I had to turn the divergence on and set it to the MACD, and then I also went through and made sure that the MACD parameter settings matched the MACD parameter settings on my chart, and it looks like they don't. So let me change this to a 12. There we go. 12, 26, 9 is the normal settings. I turned off this hidden divergence just because it makes things a little more confusing. Right, let's just look for a regular divergence that's a little easier to find since we're kind of doing some experimenting here. And I think that's all that's needed in this indicator. Let's see. There's a lot of other stuff in here, so maybe let me take a quick look at this and see if there's other stuff that I can turn off. So I just want to focus on the divergence part of this. All right, so it's going to be helpful if I could turn other stuff off. So I'm left with a much cleaner chart. So now I just need to find a divergence. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. Here we go. Maybe this is what it looks like. I'm thinking this yellow 15 might be the divergence. Oh, there we go. Okay. There's our divergence right there. Great. So let's see if we can figure out how to get a signal out of this indicator and into BloodHound. Just so we're clear, there we go. So that's our divergence there. All right, I'm going to put a name here I'm going to name this BloodHound template. And first thing I'm going to test out is the threshold solver. So essentially what I'm looking for is, I'm not sure if this indicator is going to, what value it's going to output. Is it going to, let's see, let me get the text tool here. Is it going to output like a 1? Some assumptions here. What programmers do is sometimes they'll output values like that, 1, 0, or -1 for a signal. So that's what we could be getting at that when that divergence is detecting. Or it could be outputting the price. Let's see. Let's get the price there, 36.05.5. Or sometimes an indicator will output a price. Right, so there's essentially two types of values that an indicator can output when it's generating a signal, such as this divergence signal. So if it's outputting this 1 or -1, so I would typically assume that if the indicator provides a 1, that's a signal to go long or to buy. And if it outputs a -1, then that's typically an indication that that's a short signal, right? A short or sell. So to test the 1 or -1 theory, we're going to use the threshold solver. All right, and so we'll check for a threshold of 0, and we'll see, if we get a value that's greater than 0, which could be 1, or less than 0, right, for a -1. Who knows? Let's see. Oops. let me kind of change this. I've seen programmers even do something like this, put a 0.1 as their signal, you know, or a negative 0.1. So we really don't know if the output's going to be 1 or it could be, you know, 0.1. I've seen some programmers do this too. So it's just essentially just looking for any value greater than 0, or, you know, right? So we're looking for any value greater than 0 for a long signal, or any value less than 0 for a short signal. So that's what I'm going to use the threshold for. And I should give this a name, right? Price, action, swing, and pro. And I'm going to go in here and make sure that my indicator settings are set up correctly, or at least match what's on the chart. So let's go through these settings first. Some things I do is, like, if indicators have a lot of fancy visual display on the chart, you know, in BloodHound, I'll go through and turn that stuff off. That way, my hope is that the indicator will calculate faster, and therefore, you know, make BloodHound. So if the indicator calculates its values faster, right, then that ultimately means BloodHound will run faster. So I will go in and turn off visual stuff if, you know, if I see there's an option like this. And here we go, divergence. All right, so here's mistake 1. It's set to the GOM CD. So let's change it to the MACD. And let's change our parameters here so that they match. So 12, 26, and 9 for the MACD settings. Alright, so I do have the hidden divergence turned off. It's the same as we have on our chart. We're just looking for a regular divergence. You know, once again, these line style and line width and color is not going to make any difference to BloodHound. And I'm just kind of looking through to see if there's anything else I might want to turn off. So visual patterns, obviously inside of BloodHound I don't need, you know, any kind of visual stuff turned on, so I can turn that off. I could probably turn that off. Alright, we'll take a test run with that. Okay, so the next step is let's look through all of these different plots here, right? You can see all these different plot values that looks like we can get information from. But as I scroll down to the bottom, I see this data series. Let's scroll this over. Oh, I can't open that up, but alright, so this is a data series, right? So this is like hidden information. This is information that's only passed from one indicator to another indicator. Or you could even use this information in something like the market analyzer as well. So this information you'll never see on the chart. It's essentially hidden information. Right, so we have this divergence signal. So I have that selected for my long and short. And hopefully that'll work. Let's see, doesn't seem to be any kind of signal yet. So I'm going to hit F5 on my chart just to refresh the chart and see if that helps. Well, let me scroll through the chart. And well, here's another one. Still no signal. A couple more, no signals. So, looks like so far the threshold solver's not working. Let me get back here. Alright, let's work in this area here. I'm not sure why the indicator marked this as a divergence. I think it must have been going from there to there. So looks like the line was just drawn wrong. You can see a little mini divergence right there. All right, so let's work with that. All right, so the threshold solver doesn't seem to be working. So I'm going to try using a comparison solver next. So let's give this a name. And so the comparison solver, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking to see if the indicator outputs price. So let me grab these guys. So I'm going to use the comparison solver and see if the indicator is providing price for us. And so if it's providing price, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare like the closing price of the bar to the indicator's price that it's outputting. So I'm going to change this to the closing price. And next, indicator B, I'll have to set up right as our price action swing indicator. And let's see, D. There we go. It starts with BC. So I'm going to go through here and set things up again. All right. So for our divergence, we want to use the MACD. All right, so let's set the standard default settings in here. There we go. Turn off the hidden divergence. And I'm just going to go through here and turn off some of this visual stuff. Alright, next I'll select the divergence signals. So we're comparing the closing price to the price that this indicator might be outputting. And still doesn't look like we're getting any kind of signal out of it. Alright, let's check NinjaTrader's data box and see if that gives us any clue. So in NinjaTrader's data box, we actually can't see those data series, unfortunately. So that's not that much help to us. Yeah. Data box is not helping in this situation. Let's see, what else could we try? I can try adjusting. I can try and adjust my outputs here. And let's try and hit F5 one more time. Nothing. Alright, so there's a couple other things I could try. So remember, I turned some things off in BloodHound. So let's go back and turn a few things on. So in the settings here, see, I turned off some of this visual stuff. Let's see, there we go. Entry arrows. So how about if I turn that back on? I'll turn that back on. And see if that makes a difference. And does not seem to have. So I'm going to do the same thing in the threshold solver. I'm going to go back into the indicator here. And let's turn on those visual settings here. See if that helps. So far, no luck. So I just hit F5. Yeah, it could be that the programmer just never hooked up any kind of data into that data series. All right, let's check a few other things. All right, I'll turn those back on. Let's try this. I'll turn on the hidden divergence. See what we get. And let me do the same thing on the other solver here. Alright, I'll give that a shot, and I'm going to hit F5 again. Sometimes when you make changes to, internal changes into the indicator, NinjaTrader doesn't always update the indicator, so it helps if you hit F5, and sometimes that'll revive the signal out of the indicator. Gosh, it is just not doing anything. So, kind of looks like, it's looking like even though there's that swing data series out, it's just not actually hooked up and working. Let's see if these other bool series do anything. And actually, I'm using the wrong solver for that. Just a sec here. Let me switch that over. Nope. If we're going to try and test this bool series, so let me go back into the indicator. Right, we notice there's a bool series. So bool series is true and false. So true would be on, false would be off. So let's see if we get anything out of that. Just not having any luck with this indicator. Well, let's see if we can find some double tops and double bottoms. Actually, I should probably make sure that we're seeing double tops and double bottoms on the indicator, on the chart. Alright, so let's see. Alright, how about if I increase this value here? And just one more sec. Let's check some of these visualizations down here. Not finding any double tops. Well, I mean, here's a double bottom, but looks like the indicator's not finding that one. Let's see, maybe I can increase this value even more. Let's see what happens. Swing size 7. I'll just try that first. Let's see. Nope, nothing yet. Okay, there we go. So this gold, I believe that's probably double top, bottom, or double top, double bottom. There we go. So this text just changed to gold. So I had to use like 50 and 20. All right, to get that to happen there. All right, let's see if we can get a signal at least for that double top or double bottom out of this indicator. I'm going to test the comparison solver first. I'm going to do a little testing here. Something just dawned on me, right? Which is that, you know, when you're looking for a divergence, you obviously don't know when the divergence happens on the exact bar, right? You have to wait a couple of bars for, you know, so this divergence here, you know, that's detected, right? You always have to wait for a couple of bars to go by to see, you know, if price changes direction on you, right? So you never know what a divergence is on the bar where it actually occurs, because price could have just kept on going down. So you know, this is something that's easy to forget. Is it dawned on me that it might, you know, that the indicator is probably waiting for several bars to go by before it determines, right, that this low point was made, so that way it can determine that this is a divergence. And the same thing with that double bottom that's coming up here. So I'm going to step through on my chart. So I hit F5 on my chart. My data feed is disconnected. And so now I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to step through the chart and see how this indicator is working. So I can see this is a green. This text here is green right now. See how that, look how that text disappeared on us and it moved over to the current bar now. So this indicator is back painting. So that's going to affect how it's working. And let's see, okay, so it threw up a gold for a double bottom. And oh, look at that! It just moved it over. And you notice how the text used to be over on this bar. It just moved it over. So that can be tricky to work with. All right, so here's some other things I can do. So I can use the displacement here and see if that helps any. So I'm going to put a displacement of 1 in here. So if it takes at least 1 bar to go by before the indicator, you know, gives you some kind of feedback, then we'd need a displacement of 1. And nothing yet. So let's try a displacement of 2. And still nothing yet. Let's try a displacement of 3. And let me just double check. Yeah, alright, double bottoms. Okay, that looks good. And let me try reversing these these plot settings here. So I'm just double checking to make sure that the settings in the indicator BloodHound match what's on the chart. It's almost looking like this indicator is intentionally written so that it would not work inside of other indicators. That might be the case. Well, okay. Since I remembered about the displacement, I'm going to jump back to the threshold solver and give it another try with the divergent signals here. First thing I'm going to do is set the indicator settings back to the way I have it set up in BloodHound. Right, so I think it was 15 and 7, I believe. Let's see, yep, 15 and 7, good deal. And let's see, where's our, open up the divergence. Alright, so it's still set to MACD. Alright, 12, 26, and 9, that looks good. Alright, I have the hidden turned on, regular turned on. Alright, I have the divergence set, selected. Alright, let's give this a try. So, let's put a 1 in here in the displacement. You notice how when I scroll along, you notice how this divergence line is updating itself? Let me scroll back here. I'm going to hit F5 and so look at our divergence line. It's right. It's showing us a divergence right there. And as I step forward, you see how this line is updating itself? So that makes it a little tricky when an indicator is changing itself. Alright, let's see if we can get a divergence out of that area right there. That seems to be pretty stable. Alright, so let me set this to 2, see if that works. Still no go. I'm going to take a quick sneak peek at this indicator and see if I can determine if it was just designed not to work with other indicators real quick. So just keep in mind the real premise here is not to give you guys divergence signals, but to kind of walk you through, the various testing that you can do with these third-party indicators. Because they're just all written different, and so they'll provide different output, different data, right? They work differently. So you kind of need, some different techniques for testing these right, custom written indicators. Well, I don't see anything obvious as to why we're not getting any data out of this indicator, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Well, let's see. Yeah, it's too bad this isn't working out. I was really kind of thought this would be a cool addition to your guys' arsenal there. Let me try the comparison solver one last time here. So set that up. Alright, set that back to 15 and 7. So before I was using the threshold solver, now I'm using the comparison solver to test if we can get divergence, some kind of divergence signal out of this thing. Yeah, shoot, just so far no luck. Darn. Well, I guess bottom line is, you know, when you're testing indicators, the two solvers I use first are, right, the threshold and the comparison. And that's for, right, when you're trying to get some kind of a signal out of an indicator, right? So this price action swing pro indicator, you know, it's giving us this divergence, you know, and it's giving us text, kind of showing us when things are happening. You know, so if you're working with an indicator like that, you know, it's either going to be the threshold or the comparison solver that would be the two indicators, or I mean the two solvers that you would use to analyze an indicator such as this. So, all right, yeah, Marcy's got another interesting question here. So Marcy's using an indicator such as like the MACD BB or the BB MACD indicator, and so she would like to know, you know, how do you detect when the Bollinger Bands are close to each other or pinching, or when the Bollinger Bands have expanded out quite a ways. So yeah, we can do that. We can definitely do that. All right, so I just loaded up today's workshop BloodHound file. Hit F5, there we go. Alright, so let's put the BB MACD indicator on here. I know there's a couple out there, and I have the one that's titled BB MACD. Alright, let's move that up. Okay, we'll stretch that out. So I'm just going to scan through here and look for a couple of points. Ah, here we go. All right. So that's fine when the BB's, you know, pinched together like that. And there's a nice spot right next to it, also where the Bollinger Bands expanded away from each other quite a bit. Yeah. So let's work on finding those 2 points there. All right, let's see. All right, so I'm going to work on a new logic template here. All right, so what we're doing, essentially what we're doing, is we're comparing the two bands to each other, right? We're comparing the upper band to the lower band, you know, or vice versa, the lower band to the upper band, right? So we're doing a comparison to check for their distance, right? We're checking if the distance is close to each other or if the distance is far away from each other. So the way we can do that is we'll use the comparison solver here. And so in indicator A, I'm going to set indicator A to the upper band, and I'll set indicator B to the lower band, right? So let's put the BB in there. Alright, so we're going to use the upper band in indicator A, and indicator B down here, we're going to set this to the lower band. And then the next step is to use our large amount and small amount. So the easiest thing to do is to let's see, look when they're expanded away from each other. So, right. So with our large amount and small amount, since we're using an indicator that's in its own subpanel, right? So we can see the indicator varies from 0, up to 4, maybe up to 5, right? So it has its own scaling, right? So this indicator has its own scaling system. It's not based on price. Right? So since this indicator is in its own subpanel, it doesn't have ticks per se, right? Ticks only apply to price, right? To price movement. Ticks don't really apply to indicators when they have their own scaling system. So the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to use ticks. We're going to use points. And I'll set the other one to points as well. So we'll set both of these to points, like so. And let's just take a stab at this. So at measuring these two bands. So we got about 2.2 up to 4.5. So let's look for a gap of 2 points. And set both those to 2 points. And you notice how sometimes the description in here doesn't update. So there was a way we can get this to update. Just click off the solver and click back on the solver, and now you notice how this is updated, like so. There we go. And there, so we found it. And so what we can do is go in here and kind of fine tune this. Alright, I'm going to click back on the result node just to update my description here. And really I just want to use I really just want to use the large amount here, right? Don't really want to use the small amount. And so I can see on this output here, right, this one, these two are using the small amount, right? Because I can see it says by 2 points, whereas the upper one says by 2.3 points, and this lower one says by 2.3 points. So I'm going to set this to 0, like so, and set that one to 0, like so. And so that kind of narrows my detection here. So now I can see when the bands are at least 2.3 points apart from each other. Let's see if we can go even a little further. Let's try that. There we go. Starting to narrow things down a little bit, right? You'll notice here you can see that output is using the fuzzy logic output. So if we want to get rid of that, we can set both the large amount and the small amount to the same. And there we go. There's a nice clean digital output right there. So let's move my triangle over. Oop. Okay. So there we go. There's when the bands are really expanded away from each other. Alright, so that's all responding when they're expanded. So let's drop a new comparison solver down, and we'll find when the bands are really tight, close to each other. So I'm just going to go in and set my indicator A and indicator B up real quick. There we go. Give this an appropriate name. Alright, now this time we're going to use the small amount. So let's move this over, and I can use those flags to kind of measure the distance here. So it looks like they're 0.2 points away from each other. Right, so I have 0.91 minus 0.71 is equals 0.2. So just as a little, to build in a little margin of error, how about if I go 0.19, such like so. And it would be a good idea to keep the large amount the same or a bigger number instead of leaving it 0. So I'll put 0.2 in there, and hopefully you guys have realized I need to change from ticks to points. There we go. And now we're going to set our outputs to 0. So if you read the description, right, we have this A is greater than B by 0.19 points, and then this upper one says 0.2 points, and we have this neutral area in between. And so that is what we want to use. I think I put my margin of error, set it the opposite direction, so let's go 0.21. Right, yeah, 0.21 points. I'll set this to 0.22 points. There we go. Alright, yeah, set the small amount the wrong direction. And there we go. Now you notice we're getting a long and a short output, right? And that's kind of what you want, because this is a non-directional detection, or I should say this is a non-directional condition, right? So seeing the bands being narrow or expanded doesn't tell you the direction of the trade. It just tells you the lack of volatility. And so let me go back to this solver here that's looking for the expanded, and we need to get not just a long out, but a long and a short out at the same time. So if I set my short output right there correctly, I'll set that to 0. There we go. So now we're getting a long and a short when the Bollinger Bands are expanded away from each other, basically telling us that there is volatility occurring. And then over here, when the Bollinger Bands pull together, it's telling us that there's a lack of volatility. So there you go. And if you want to see both of those together, you know, you're not going to really know which is which, except by looking at the chart. But we can join them both together with the OR node, and there we go, showing us both. All right, good question there, Marcy. Let's see, Marcy is asking, is the price action swing pro indicator in Big Mike's elite section? I don't know which section it's in. It's not in the download section. I had to find it in one of the forums. So if you use the search tool, I think you'll find it mentioned in the forums, and then you have to look at all the attachments in that thread, and eventually you'll find it. It wasn't that easy to do. So, and I guess just so you guys know, any indicators I get from Big Mike, I will not email those out to anybody, because that's a violation of Big Mike's policy. Right? So you can get your account suspended if Big Mike determines that you've been passing out his indicators to other people. So therefore, I will not email any indicators from Big Mike's. If I find an indicator from NinjaTrader's download forum, I don't believe they have that same policy. So therefore, I don't mind if the indicator came from NinjaTrader. So Roland is using the SI Pro Renko for backtest results. So yeah, the answer to your question is no. Those backtest results using the Pro Renko, backtest results using Renko bars in general are not really valid results. And let me kind of show you why. So let's change this chart over to a 5 Renko real quick. And you'll notice how the opening price of the bar, right, is always perfect. You notice how the opening price is always perfect, and it always matches the closing price of the previous bar. So Renko bars are a Japanese, I believe they're a Japanese type of bar, and they were designed, you know, for what people like them for, because they smooth out price movement. Okay, but they were not designed for backtesting results, because whenever you get a bar that has the opening price equaling the previous bar's closing price, right, you're never going to get an accurate backtest results, because price doesn't move like this, right? This is totally unrealistic. You know, if we look at a regular, like a 5-minute bar, right, I mean, look at how the opening price and the closing price always vary, right? There's almost always a gap between the opening price and the closing price of bars, right? So that's realistic price action there, realistic price movement. You know, the same thing with the Pro Renko. You know, these modified Renkos, so these, like the Pro Renko, they're typically kind of, the generic term is a median Renko or a modified Renko. And so let's see, a 5 and a 2. I'll change that to 1. We only need to see 2 days on here. Click OK. All right. Now, logic tells you that when price closed up here, price did not move all the way down there to open the next bar. Right? Logic should tell you that is clearly not the case. Right? That when this bar closed up here, price did not jump way down here and open this bar. Right? And it did, especially, maybe in a volatile market, especially on oil, that might be the case, but not for every single bar in a row. So clear this opening price of the bar is not the correct opening price. So that's not telling you where price really is. So therefore, that skews your backtesting results. And so that's why, now this Pro Renko bar, a lot of trade rooms like to use this because of, just purely because of the visual, smooth look that it provides on the chart. But for backtesting, you need to use the backtest Renko. As far as I know, this is the only Renko bar out there that uses the correct opening price. As far as I know, I'm sure other people are going to start making that type of Renko bar now. And one thing to note, you want to turn wave mode off. So look, if I leave wave mode on, right, it looks very similar to the Pro Renko. Right, it has that nice smooth look to it. And I think There we go. So that kind of looks similar to the Pro Renko, right? If I turn wave mode off, we take a look at this. Right? Now you can see how the opening price, you know, they're all completely different. Right? This bar here had no body. Right? The opening price also basically, you know, price jumped up. It created a new bar and it jumped up again. Actually, price came back down and opened a new bar down here. So this bar is going to get you the best backtest results possible with a Renko bar. So, okay, well, Roland, I think that does it. We'll see you next week. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.